In the last few months there have been some major updates regarding damage. First off is a change to resistance and retaliation. Resistance now only nullifies non-damaging conditions. To deal with the damaging conditions, retaliation has been changed to resolution. Resolution reduces incoming condition damage by 33%, same as protection for strike damage. Speaking of strike damage, all the skills now say if they affect strike or condition damage. If they don't say which one of the two, it's probably both. Aside from these two changes, several relevant traits and skills have been nerfed or buffed. To see if they have changed functionally as in additive or multiplicative, I've tested them all. As a refresher, let me explain additive and multiplicative again. This is the formula for damage received. But since all the modifiers are negative, we can simplify it by changing every plus into a minus. This means that an effect that is additive always reduces the incoming damage by the number on the label. Multiplicative effects, however, depend on the additive effects. Let's say we have a few additive effects, so we only receive half damage. If we add an additive effect that reduces our damage by 50%, we take 0 total damage. But if the effect is multiplicative, we take 25% of the incoming damage. Most damage reducing effects truly shine when you can combine them with each other. Some classes can even get to 0 damage taken all the time. Imagine always playing with Endure Pain up. It is possible. Before I show how to become immune to strike damage, I first want to show how to become resilient to condition damage and how impactful the resistance and retaliation change has been. To make calculations easier, ANET has decided that all condition damage reducing effects are additive. Resolution reduces incoming condition damage by a third. This can be combined with either Superior Rune of Hulbrak or Superior Rune of the Stars, and with a bowl of curry mussel soup. With the 10% from the runes and the 5% from the food, we can come to a total of 48%. That's nearly half. It's possible to reduce it even more with both Light Aura and Dark Aura. Each reduce the damage by 10% and 20% if both are up. But we are looking for permanent effects, and I've not found a build yet to reliably upkeep any of these auras. Not even Guardian. Several classes can reduce the damage even more with several permanent effects. Guardian has Signet of Judgment and the Perfect Signet of Judgment. With the trait Perfect Inscriptions, Guardian can have a constant minus 12% condition damage. This brings the Guardian up to minus 60% condition damage. Revenant has Vengeful Hammers and Righteous Rebel. It's easy to upkeep 5 stacks of Callous Fervor, but Vengeful Hammers is a trap. Although with the trait Replenishing Despair in Corruption, a Revenant can permanently upkeep the Vengeful Hammers, they would lose access to Resolution, which is a net loss. Total is minus 68% as a Renegade. Engineer has Iron Blooded and Adaptive Armor. The Iron Blooded trait reduces condition damage by 2% for each unique boon on the Engineer. There are 12 boons in the game, but one of them is Aegis, which is basically never up. Also, some boons are just not accessible or able to be kept up for 100% of the time. I would guess that Engineer is as efficient in this as the Guardian, perhaps even a bit more. As a Scrapper, they can take the trait Adaptive Armor. As long as the Scrapper has Barrier, there's an additional 20% condition damage reduction. Barrier is not hard to come by as a Scrapper, since one of the minor traits converts damage to Barrier. Around minus 60% condition damage as an Engineer, or minus 80% condition damage as a Scrapper. Ranger has Second Skin. A Soul Beast can take the trait Second Skin to have protection become like Resolution. It is possible for a Soul Beast with lots of boon duration or MOA stance to have permanent resolution and protection. It requires a lot of micromanagement and an offhand axe, but it is possible. Still not enough to reach immunity. Minus 81% condition damage. Mesmer has Illusionary Membrane. The minor trait Illusionary Membrane in Chaos gives Mesmers 10% condition damage reduction, as long as they have regeneration. Nice addition, but the weakest out of the bunch. Minus 58% condition damage. Necromancer with Beyond the Veil, Dark Defiance and Blood as Sand. With Death Magic, Necromancer becomes the master of condition immunity. Already the Necromancer is famous for transferring and eating conditions, but with Death Magic, Necromancer can nullify it as well. Beyond the Veil gives the Necromancer minus 10% condition damage, while it has a certain amount of carapace stacks. This is not an issue. Dark Defiance states that the Necromancer gains minus 20% condition damage, as long as it has protection. Also not an issue. The trait Corruptor's Fervor in Death Magic grants the Necromancer a stack of carapace when it inflicts a condition on an enemy, and also gives the Necromancer permanent protection without any boon duration investment when it has a high amount of carapace stacks. From this one trait line, it already has minus 30% condition damage. As a Scourge, the Necromancer gains Blood as Sand for free. When it has 3 shades up, or 1 with Sand Savant, the Scourge gains minus 15% condition damage. The trade-off for all these effects is that the Necromancer has no access to Resolution. This brings the total to minus 45% condition damage as a Necromancer and minus 60% as a Scourge. But this is only the case while doing most of the content in Guild Wars 2. While in Fractals, there are methods to help us out. For starters, we have the defensive Fractal Potion. Not only does it give the usual 25% strike damage reduction, but also gives 25% condition damage reduction. This Fractal Potion is busted. With this extra help, Scrapper and Soulbeast can reach the elusive condition damage immunity. But the fun doesn't stop here. Sometimes in Fractals, luck is on your side in the form of a Mistlock Instability. Normally they are quite harmful, but they can prove to be a boon as well. We Bleed Fire. This Mistlock Instability makes enemies periodically shoot out fireballs. These fireballs deal the same amount of damage to everyone, regardless of health or immunity. To compensate, everyone in the Fractal gains minus 20% condition damage, for free. With the Fractal Potion and We Bleed Fire, everyone can get minus 88% condition damage duration, provided that they have Resolution. That means that Guardians, Renegades, Engineers, Soulbeasts and Necromancers can reliably ignore damaging conditions when the stars align. All the other classes still take damage, but only 12% or less of the usual amount. But this is from a solo viewpoint. What about groups? Well, there are 2 classes that can help out. Guardian can share its perfect signet of judgment to others with perfect inscriptions. 2 Guardians can keep it up around all the time. This means that in a We Bleed Fire, 2 coordinated Guardians can keep the group safe from conditions. A third Guardian or Alacrity helps with this task. Guardians are also very adept in providing Resolution. Renegades can also reach minus 100%, even outside of Fractals. To do this, they use Breakrazor's Bastion in Kala. This heal skill gives 5 allies inside it minus 50% condition damage. 4 Renegades can keep this up with some coordination. This effect, coupled with 5 stacks of Kala's Fervor with Righteous Rebels, gives Renegades minus 180% condition damage. With this you can change the runes and food for something more suitable. It would still give Renegades minus 103% condition damage. Conclusion. After the resistance change, it's still possible to permanently take no condition damage in a solo or group setting. That said, conditions can also be mitigated with cleansing them, transferring them or converting them. Unless the conditions are applied fast and with a high stack, it's probably best to remove them or even out-heal them. For strike damage, we have a few universal strike damage reducers. In the additive category, we have Frost Aura for 10%, Protection for 33%, Armor Booster for 5%, Muscles Food for 10%, or Peppercorn Food for 10%. In the multiplicative section, we have Superior Rune of Perplexity for 10%, Saffron Bread while stunned 20%, Weakness 50%, Superior Rune of the Scrapper 7%, and Potion of Enemy Slaying 10%. We can safely ignore both runes and the Potion of Slaying. Their effect is quite low for a multiplicative effect. Weakness makes half of the incoming hits with lancing blows. These halve the incoming damage. Even when taking 25% damage or lower, that could be quite potent. However, since it doesn't affect enemies with a break bar and it's quite random, I won't use it in my calculations. Saffron bread is also not an option. The 20% looks strong, but it's multiplicative and only works when stunned, knocked down or knocked back. From the additives, Frost Aura is a tricky one. Unlike boons, auras don't stack. Instead, a new aura overrides the previous one, even if it has a shorter duration. Coupled with the fact that the only class that has access to lots of ice fields and finishers is Elementalist, makes Frost Aura an unreliable permanent buff. Armor Booster is a buff for everyone. It can give the little protection that sometimes is necessary. That said, the combat boosters are in limited supply. They also don't work in raids. If you have plenty of armor boosters and plan to use this information in a place other than raids, you can add 5% on each end result, but I will leave it out of my calculations. This leaves us with protection and mussels or ascended peppercorn food. These give every class a base value of 43% less damage received. Some enemies might apply vulnerability. This condition is additive. This means that it can ruin your day if you rely on your invulnerability and you get a full 25 stacks of it. It's useless with resistance though, and in lower stacks it shouldn't be that harmful. When in Fractals, there's a very strong buff, the defensive mist potion. Gulping down the large potion reduces the damage every class receives by 25% for both strike and condition damage. When you're planning on using any of these information for Fractals, feel free to add 25% to the end total, or 30% if you're planning on using boosters as well. Sometimes a Fractal has the instability stick together. This can be a great help, but also the most dangerous instability. When close to your friends, you receive 20% less damage. But when away from your friends, you receive 60% more damage. This can be lethal on mechanics where you have to spread out. This instability, together with the defensive mist potion, gives all classes a minimum of 88% less damage received. When playing solo, this instability is disabled. Now to briefly go over each class with the mindset that they provide their own boons and effects. If there is a boon or effect that can be maintained in a group setting, I'll mention it. Mesmer only has access to a single damage reducing effect, the trait Illusionary Defense. Every time the Mesmer summons an illusion, it receives 5% less damage for 5 seconds. This can stack up to 5 times for 25% less damage. But to reach that number, you would need to summon, on average, 1 illusion per second. This does not seem that feasible. Sadly, the ranger does not have much in the form of permanent damage reduction. Doyak's stance is quite potent in a group setting, but even with alacrity and stance sharing, the uptime is not there. Oakhart Salve is an effect that can be maintained, but it's multiplicative. This means that it gives around 3% with protection and muscles, and 2.5% while in Fractals. It's there, but it's no immunity. Engineer has a good set of reducers. Overshield makes that protection grants 40% damage reduction instead of 33%. This is quite the improvement, and it makes calculations a bit easier. Now, protection and muscles together halve the damage the engineer takes. With the Iron-Blooded trait, the engineer also receives 2% less damage per unique boon. There are 12 unique boons in the game, but the engineer has no reliable way to have all those boons up permanently. As a guideline, I think the engineer should have no trouble having 8 unique boons up all the time. In a group that can become 11, no problem. The 12th boon, Aegis, doesn't have many sources outside of Guardian, and is most likely not up when taking damage, as it would block the attack. This brings the total up to 66 less damage received alone, or 72% with the help of others. In Fractals, that is 91% and 97%, nearly at the 100% mark. Warrior has the iconic Endure Pain to shrug off all the incoming hits. Rampage is also a strong skill to halve all the incoming damage. Sadly, both of these skills are not even remotely permanent. Thick Skin reduces damage by 5% while above 90% health. When taking minimal to no damage, that shouldn't be a problem. Hardened armor reduces damage by 10% as long as the warrior has resolution. Not an easy task, but with enough boon duration or in a group, that should be possible. With both traits in play, the warrior can reduce 58% damage and 83% in Fractals. With the trait Perfect Inscriptions, the Guardian skill Signet of Judgment should gain a 2% bonus on damage reduction. This makes it 12% instead of the original 10%. The trait is currently bugged, as it counts both the 10% and the 12% bonus at once, resulting in a 22% total damage reduction. I'm assuming it gets fixed soon, so let's presume it's 12%. As an added bonus with the trait, the 12% effect can now be shared. It lasts for 10 seconds and has a 20-second cooldown. This means that 2 Guardians can give their entire party a minus 12% incoming damage buff. This effect can stack, so 4 Guardians can give up to 5 people a minus 24% incoming damage buff. Some coordination or alacrity is required to make this work though. It's a nice gimmick to give a 5th member 24% less incoming damage, but unless you're thinking of a raid tanking strategy, probably not that useful. Without sharing, a Guardian receives 55% less damage, or 80% less in Fractals. A Dragon Hunter can take Hunter's Fortification to receive 10% less incoming damage, as long as they don't suffer from a condition. Since it's multiplicative, it adds less than the 10% would suggest. 4.5% less damage outside of Fractals, and 2% inside Fractals. For a total of 59.5% less damage outside Fractals, and 82% inside Fractals. Thief is the first class where I'm going to suggest a build. With the usual Maleficent 7 Deadeye rifle build, a Deadeye is able to upkeep permanent protection. Replace either Deadly Arts or Critical Strikes with Shadow Arts to take the trait Flickering Shadows. As long as the Deadeye is revealed, they take 33% less damage. This adds up to 76% outside of Fractals and 101% inside of Fractals. With the proper rotation, the downtime outside of revealed should be minimal. With a group providing protection, the thief doesn't even have to run Maleficent 7, as long as they go in and out of stealth as often as possible. This is the only damage reducing build that seems a bit stronger in competitive than in PvE, thanks to a longer reveal duration. Together with Engineer, Elementalist also has access to Protection Plus. The trait Hardy Conduit and Tempest changes protection to give around 40% reduced incoming damage instead of 33%. This puts Tempests at 50% damage reduction in combination with food. If the Tempest also stays in Earth Attunement, they gain a 7% extra reduced damage from Stone Flesh. Staying in Earth Attunement is an unusual strategy, but not unheard of. In the Earth trade line, there's also Diamond Skin. Thanks to the tankiness of the Earth Tempest, this trait will almost certainly remove the issue of conditions. To round the package off, there's Geomancer's Training, to reduce a bit more damage while close to an enemy. Although Necromancer only has one additive modifier, it's a great one. Blood as Sand in Scourge gives 5% for each active shade or 15% with the trait Sand Savant, for both strike and condition damage. Add to this the amount of barrier they can apply and the general tankiness of Necromancer, and you get a good foundation for a survivable build that can still dish out a lot of pain. Reaper gains some strong modifiers, but they are all multiplicative. It's possible to keep Reaper Shroud and Rise up almost permanently, but they won't be able to reach Invulnerability. Without outside help, they do outperform Blood as Sand, so it's a valid alternative. Revenant still has the most damage reducing modifiers out of all the classes. A few of them got nerfed, so it's a bit more difficult to reach the elusive 100% damage reduced as before. It's almost mandatory to have Demonic Resistance, Determined Resolution and Hardening Persistence. These traits together reduce 33 to 45% damage, depending on the pip upkeep. This also means that there's not much choice in the trait lines. Corruption for demonic resistance and lots of resistance. Retribution for determined resolution and some resolution. Herald for hardening persistence and for access to glint. This means that the Revenant needs a source for a good uptime of resistance, resolution and protection. Resistance can be gotten from swapping legends in combat, using a Malix skill, and using pain absorption. Resolution can be gotten from using an elite skill, performing a dodge, and from using pain absorption. Protection is easily gained from Facet of Chaos in glint. If your boon duration is a tad low, or you just want a little boost, you can use Superior Rune of Durability to give a bit of protection and resistance. This is best done with 4 others to benefit from the AoE effect. For a Revenant that uses Malix and glint, the grand total would end up at 76 to 88% reduced incoming damage. For Fractals, this is enough, and for open world, it's plenty reduction. For raids, we will have to make use of spreading out the boons to make use of a third legend, Jealous. A Herald attuned to Jealous has access to 2 modifiers, Facet of Nature Dwarf and Vengeful Hammers. Facet of Nature Dwarf is a 10 target effect that reduces incoming damage by 10%. If enough people from the raid squad swap in and out of Jealous, it shouldn't be a problem to always have this buff up. While in Jealous, these heralds can use Vengeful Hammers to reduce damage for a further 29%. If necessary, the Jealous heal skill adds a decent amount of resolution as well. Traits: Corruption 322, Retribution 321, and Herald 333. Every Herald takes Malix for easy access to resolution. One Herald using glint and a high amount of boon duration is enough to upkeep protection, fury and a decent amount of might. If you notice that there's enough coordination, several Heralds can swap out Jealous for Shiro for more damage. Runes, sigils, weapons, attribute combinations, etc. are up to your discretion. I suggest at least a few main hand swords for some vulnerability and staff for breakbars. As for stats, concentration is very useful, especially for glint facets. As long as you can upkeep the necessary effects and boons, the rest doesn't matter. Total damage reduced in Jealous is 115%, in glint is 98%, and in other legends it's 96%.
You may have noticed that I have mostly been talking about helpful effects rather than builds. This is because previously you could, with the proper food and the ever-present fractal potion, be invulnerable with just resistance and protection. Such an easy way to take no damage is not possible anymore. So, instead of giving a complicated build to follow, I'd rather give you a list of maintainable helpful effects and why you should take them. So aside from Ranger, Thief and Revenant, which have a relatively easy method to gain God mode, I would suggest to just keep your damage reducing traits and skills in mind and always try to have protection up, and eat your pepper veggies. I don't plan to do another update on this matter. I will, however, do a few showcases and perhaps a build video down the road, but for now I'd rather focus on different things. Thank you for watching and I hope you have a nice day.